Hello, Cubs fans, and welcome to a brand new edition of Cubs on Tap. I am Ron Luce. I am solo again. This one, we originally said there was no show today. That's pretty much where this starts. I know the guys are off doing Easter things. I was doing Easter things myself today, wishing everybody a happy Easter to those who celebrate that are listening along with us today. Happy holidays to anybody else celebrating anything else that may or may not be happening today. We won't get too far into that. But it didn't feel right to not have a show about this Diamondback series. And it was eating at me. And I felt the need to talk some Cubs baseball, and hopefully knew that there would be some people that needed some Cubs baseball discussions in their life here on this Sunday evening. So we certainly wanted to get a show out there today. And of course, we will be live Tuesday as well. We'll be live Thursday. Those shows still intact. This one kind of came out of nowhere. So if anybody's wondering, well, where's the rest of the crew? Originally, we weren't going to have a show because of the holiday, and I made an executive decision to jump on here to talk with you guys here tonight. Scott from Iowa says Ron's doing the Lord's work on Zombie Sunday. I don't know if I'm doing the Lord's work by any means, but we are here to talk some Cubs baseball. We're going to have some fun with this, and just like Scott, I encourage anybody that's listening along with join the conversation. Let's chat. Let's BS. Let's get into this thing, shall we? I don't think we can start this show any other way than talking about Friday, because to me, Friday deserves its own show in kind of a silo, if you really think about it. What a game that ended up becoming. A very unsuspecting game too, right? It kind of felt like it was going to be a pitcher's duel. It's 2-1 going into the bottom of the seventh inning. And then all hell breaks loose at Wrigley Field. Absolutely unleashed at Wrigley. And what a crazy stretch of 3 half innings of baseball that was on Friday afternoon. Bottom of the seventh, the Cubs put up 5. Everybody's feeling good. Ian Happ hits a grand slam. All feels right in the world. And then all hell breaks loose the other way. Eugenio Suarez. Of course it had to be Eugenio Suarez. Which we got to hear Pat Hughes say it again. I mean, there's no name in baseball that I think I enjoy hearing Pat Hughes pronounce than Eugenio Suarez. But he hits a grand slam, of course. Of course. It had to be him. Theatrically, it had to be him. It was cinema. Somebody was writing the script. Knew it was going to be him. That even gave them a chance. Continue to pile on. They make it an 11-7 ball game. And perhaps the greatest punch for punch I've seen between ex-admins for social teams in quite some time. That was very nonchalant, but it perfectly defined the state of the game. The Arizona Diamondbacks, the 8th inning hates to see us coming. And in fairness, this season, the Arizona Diamondbacks have very much been that team. If you haven't paid attention to them, I know I haven't in great detail, but enough to know, they trailed, I believe it was the Brewers earlier this season, 4-0 going to the 9th inning, and they walked it off. They are that team right now who very much at any point can come back late in the game and take care of business. And they did that again. And they did it to the Cubs when they were in Arizona. Cubs had a chance at the series win on that Sunday. They rattle off a huge 8th inning, and the Cubs ultimately don't get the victory. And it looked like it was going to be that way again. And man, oh man, I'm sure I was not alone in this feeling. But the cuss words were flying heavy on Good Friday when they probably shouldn't have been. And I think Friday's game, more importantly than anything, I think made me feel like this Cubs team is truly never out of any game. Like, yeah, they've had their moments early in the season thus far, And, they've had that ability to, you know, be ahead and work through and battle adversity, right? We've seen this team do that. And big shout out to Triple R Bail Bonds in the comments. Thank you very much. That is very much appreciated. But when it's all said and done, like, I don't think I was fully sold on this Cubs team of like they can come back at any given moment and take care of business until Friday. That game to me really made me rethink this Cubs team in 2025 of like, wow, they really are never out of it. No matter what happens, no matter what the circumstances, no matter who they're playing, frankly, right? We've talked at nauseum on this show so far throughout the month of April about the gauntlet that this month is on the schedule. They went out there and just like it was nothing, responded with 6 runs of their own. After giving up 10 runs, responded with 6 of their own. And just as Triple R Bailbond says here, this team has heart, never, ever quit. They really do. And Friday perfectly highlighted that. Carson Kelly gets things going with a second home run in the game. Talk about this guy. I think it was Joey, one of the Cubs on Tap members, called him the second coming of Barry Bonds. And I've kind of run with it, even just talking to friends over the course of the weekend, because it's really funny. But he is off to such an incredible start. He gets it going. Then all of a sudden, everybody's like, okay, all right, we're feeling something now. Then Kyle Tucker comes through and gives them the lead with the 2-run homer. And everybody's like, that's the guy. Go pay him whatever amount of money he wants. Just make sure you go do it. And then a guy who I think has continued to fly under the radar in terms of how good of a start he's had to the season. I think some of that is because he has been out of the lineup at times due to injury. But then Seiya Suzuki adds the insurance run and makes it 13-11. What a game. And then ultimately, I'll tell you what, I know Alek Thomas got the double in the 9th inning, but a really good 9th inning from Ryan Pressly. And he's going to be mentioned again here as we continue to talk about the rest of the series throughout the show. But wow, that game on Friday, quite frankly, and you guys can see it below me if you're watching along on YouTube. Was that the game of the season? I'm talking Major League Baseball wide so far. I can't think of a game that had that much chaos. Because think about it this way. There were 24 runs scored between both teams in that baseball game. 21 of those runs came between the bottom of the 7th and the bottom, and effectively in the top of the 9th. 21 runs. Think about this. Let me put this into even more perspective. Excluding the 9th inning, 21 of the 24 runs were scored after the 7th inning stretch was sang at Wrigley Field. That's the craziest part. You're watching a pitcher's duel for 6.5 innings of 2-1 baseball for it to become a 13-11 final. That has to be one of the games of the season in all of baseball. I think when we're sitting here in September and you start to see, whether it's Major League Baseball themselves or the creative accounts, whatever it is, you start to see them put together, those highlights of games of the season so far in Major League Baseball, league-wide, right? Because we have hundreds and effectively thousands of games every year because of how the schedule plays out. That one's going to have to be on that list somewhere. And it's only April 20th. That's the craziest part about Friday's game. And again, there's a chance Friday's game could be its own show. It really, really could. And unfortunately, we can't talk an hour about that game tonight, because we do have 2 other games to talk about. But nonetheless, what a baseball game. What a baseball game. And when you're going through it in the middle of it, it's really easy to get pissed off. I know for me it was. I was fuming by the middle of the 8th and then in disbelief by the bottom of the 8th. or the conclusion of the bottom of the eighth, I should say, in utter disbelief. What a ball game. What a win. I mean, what looked like one of the games. So it's fun for a little transparency for everybody into the Cubs on Tap operation. We have a Google sheet with every game listed out this season. And it's a way for us to track, hey, who's running the X account tonight? Who's jumping on the show? Who's writing the recap? Just for all of us as a group to stay on the same page without having to actively ask the same questions. And it's all, color coded. It's pretty. The accountant brain and me in spreadsheets put this together. We have a column that says, did the Cubs piss the game away? And why? As like a part of the tracker. So when we're at the end of the year, we can go back and be like, son of a bitch, that's one of those games they should have won. And I was getting ready to put it in that column. I thought it was going to be one of those games where we were going to be sitting here today, especially after today's outcome, and going, wow, you had a chance to arguably sweep this team and you lost 2 out of 3. Instead, because of just an epic comeback, they were able to make it ultimately a series victory when it was all said and done. But Friday's game set the tone, set the tempo for the rest of the series. And really, I think for Saturday's game too, we can easily make that argument in terms of how things went on Saturday afternoon. A couple of the comments here, certainly want to give love to those joining us in the comment section. My dad says, bats are solid, bullpen's starting to come around, and the starters are doing their job. It really does feel that way. And Friday's game was certainly one of those days, because even though the bullpen largely let the game get away, Colin Ray pitched a really solid 4 2/3 once again. And I'm looking up right here because I want to make sure I get my numbers correctly. Pitched 69. Nice. 69 pitches. So it seems like right now they're having him go about 70 until he's fully stretched out. Now, whether he stays in the rotation or eventually goes back to the bullpen, we don't know, right? Obviously, we can sit here and hypothesize all we want. But right now, that's kind of been the sweet spot these last 2 games. He gave you almost 5 full innings of work on less than 70 pitches. That's pretty impressive. He was really, really good. Corbin Burnes, equally as good in this game. I think that kind of gets undersold. I mean, he doesn't take the loss. He gets a no decision, but 6 innings of 6-hit, 2-run ball. He didn't walk anybody. And he K'd 3. The strikeout numbers are down for Corbin Burnes, but he did his job. Right? It was the bullpen that made everything go crazy. And even then, right, you could make the argument of it was the windiest day at Wrigley that I would argue we've seen since 2022, 2023, maybe. Right? I mean, that last season, it's discussed amongst the Cubs fan base, even the front office, of how much Wrigley played as a pitcher's park last season. Friday was not a pitcher's day. So the fact that the starters were as good as they were was impressive. But the bats got theirs when it was all said and done. Scott says here, he says, Friday's game has me pulled it all the way in, or got me pulled all in. This team has a winning series against the best teams in the NL. Tell me why they can't win it all. And I think that's a great way to kind of, at least, again, it's early, right? We're, 24 games into this thing, if I do my math correctly? So you could it's really easy to sit back and be like, well, yeah, of course they can win it. And I do think they can. Obviously, the Cubs need to continue doing this. I think for me, maybe it's a mental wall that I've put up because of the last 2 seasons. And really, even 2022 was this way a little bit too. May has not been kind to the Cubs the last 3 years. It really hasn't. The month of May has scared the shit out of me. So I think if we're sitting here it's not Memorial Day weekend, is the last weekend, but the last weekend of May, and this team has an above 500 record in the month of May, then I think at that point, Scott, I'll be on the same wavelength as you of like, tell me why this team can't win it all. Because the offense, if nothing else, is going to seemingly keep them in ball games. The starters have been good. And even amidst losing Justin Steele, the starters have been good. They've gotten the job done. Shota's picked up right where he left off a season ago. Jameson Tyone's been solid. Ben Brown has been fine. And, maybe he's working some things out still. Colin Ray's been really good stepping in Justin Steele's spot. And Matthew Boyd has been a pleasant surprise thus far, even for somebody like myself, who I think I was one of the people that was a little more okay with the Matthew Boyd signing than others, even amongst just the Cubs on Tap crew, let alone the Cubs fan base as a whole. And they've all gotten the job done. Now it's up to this bullpen. And Sunday's game, to me, it gives me a little bit of hope that, like, hey, I think guys are starting to find their roles and do some good things. And even Saturday's game, you can make the same argument when it was all said and done. My dad said it was the wildest. That's in reference to Friday's game. And then Triple R Bail Bonds here says, every emotion was experienced. Ain't that the damn truth? So, I mean, what a game on Friday. What an absolute game. Cubs get it done, come from behind, and then they take that momentum into Saturday's game. And for the Bears fans that are out there, if you're not a Bears fan, I'm sorry. You got to deal with me for a second. But when you got Ben Johnson there and there's members of the Bears there to support him because they've started their offseason activities, the NFL draft is this week. So if you haven't been keeping it up with Bears on Tap, you better do so because there's a lot coming up in the next, 4 or 5 days. But Ben Johnson throws out the first pitch and he brings the good vibes. And the Cubs took care of business. I think that's the takeaway I have of Saturday's game. Friday was the holy hell, what a comeback. What a crazy experience. What an offensive explosion. What a, however you want to describe it. But something borderline outer worldly in the sense of sports. I mean, Saturday's game was just kind of a commanding win. And I know it was a 4-run win, but I would take that as commanding. There was no save recorded. To me, like, if you can't pick up a save, you have handedly taken care of a baseball team. That's just kind of my own mental way I look at it. Is, did you get into a save spot? No? Great. You took care of business. That's exactly what we want to see. Because that means you beat them bad enough. And man, oh man, they took care of business. And you know what the coolest part of Saturday's game was? It was 3 guys that really carried the torch, right? We got 2 RBIs from Kyle Tucker off the big triple. That's a second triple of the season already, by the way. We're not even through April yet. Something to keep in mind. Then you got Seiya hitting his 6th home run. Coming back after Friday, putting a ball out, a very important baseball, leaving the ballpark to dead center. Does it again on Saturday. 6th homer of the season. And then Michael Busch, who, to me, is the guy that is flying under the radar the most, especially on a national level because of Kyle Tucker and Seiya Suzuki and some of the other big names that just exist on the Cubs. Michael Busch is kind of becoming like a dude. And I think Cubs fans saw what he had to offer a season ago, right? You saw the flashes, you saw the moments. To me, one of my favorite moments at Wrigley Field in my lifetime at a baseball game, in terms of a significant event that happened that day in the game, was the Michael Busch walk-off against San Diego last year. Especially being in the bleachers, because as that ball was hit, there was a crack of lightning that struck over the top of Wrigley. And it's out there. If you want to go read it, if you haven't read it already, it's probably the piece of writing that I'm the most proud of in my lifetime, truthfully. It's like a fan's point of view writing piece of that Michael Busch home run. It's over on tapsportsnet.com. You can check it out there. I would just type in Michael Busch home run. You'll find it. It's written by me. But it's those 3 guys, each having 2 ribbies, that drove the offense. And don't get me wrong, I got the numbers here in front of me. 8 total hits as a team. Dansby Swanson had 2 hits, which he desperately needs to have that kind of day. PCA had an extra base hit in this one with a double, as did Dansby Swanson. Obviously, Tucker, Suzuki, they each had one hit, which were good for those 2 RBIs. Michael Busch having 2 hits of his own. But everybody's kind of starting to settle into their spots in the lineup too. Because that was the best part, I think, of Saturday's game. Your 2, 3, 4 hitters were responsible for driving in runs. These are the guys that clearly Craig Counsell sees as your role in this team moving forward is to drive in runs. I need you in these spots, right? Hey, Michael Busch, we're going to do you have protection behind you? I don't know, because Dansby Swanson's hitting a $185. But hey, you're going to have protection in front of you because you got Seiya Suzuki and Kyle Tucker hitting in front of you. Oh, and you still have Ian Happ hitting at the top of your lineup, who, despite being 0 for 2, got on base twice with a pair of walks. Even when he's not hitting, he's going to find a way on base. Ian Happ is a money ball player. If you know, you know. Why do we love him? Because he gets on base. And then the guys that needed to drive him in drove him in. And I think that was what was most important from Saturday's game. Miguel Amaya scoring a run as well, having a walk of his own. And then Ben Brown, despite walking a lot of guys, 4 walks, that's a lot. You know, you'd like to see him get that figured out, but 6 Ks, just the 1 earned on the solo homer, and 3 hits and 4 innings of work. But the walks drove up his pitch count. That ultimately gets him out of the game sooner than most were hoping, through 100 pitches in just those 4 innings of work. But then how about Caleb Thielbar coming in for 2 innings of work? Of perfect baseball at that, with a strikeout. Brad Keller pitched a great inning. And then Daniel Palencia, who we discussed a little bit after the San Diego series of kind of the potential of what he can become, and being a triple digit, guy in terms of an arm out of the bullpen. Gives you 2 innings of work, gives up the 1 run, a hit and a walk, but he fans 2. And you take care of business. And you only had to use 3 bullpen arms, despite your starter going only 4 innings. And none of them were your supposed high leverage guys, right? It wasn't Porter Hodge. It wasn't Ryan Presley needing to come in the game. Julian Merriweather, who we saw pitch on Sunday. It wasn't any of those guys, because Brad Keller can get the job done. Because Caleb Thielbar, I hope he makes me eat my words. I hope he makes me look like an asshole, frankly. Because I was not impressed with the Caleb Thielbar signing. I said, why is he the only lefty option that you have considered for your bullpen? He pitches like he did on Saturday. I'll happily eat crow and stick my foot in my mouth. That's fine. I like being wrong when I'm negative about the Chicago Cubs. If there's ever a time in my life I want to be wrong, it's when I'm negative about the Chicago Cubs. And if that's the case with Caleb Thielbar, then so be it. And then Daniel Palencia continuing to show his worth, being able to pitch multiple innings out of the bullpen. Saturday was an important win because it conquered the series. It didn't matter what happened on Sunday. You got another series victory. So the San Diego Padres are still your only series loss in a traditional 3-game setting. Because, right, you had the series tie with the Diamondbacks in 4, and then the series loss to the Dodgers in Tokyo in just 2. They've won all but 1. And it's against arguably the best team in baseball right now. The Padres are just humming on all cylinders. Cubs are doing good shit. And Saturday was truly that game I think that we all needed. Because then Sunday's Easter Sunday showers. Literally and figuratively. Just like my dad says. And it's just April. That's the funny thing with all these stats, right? About this team right now. And it's just April. Yeah, it's still April. April 20th at that, right? We still have 10 days of baseball. Not 10 full days of baseball, but you understand what I mean. Sunday's game was disappointing. And I'm not sitting here looking around at things to, throw at the wall and get mad about and this and that. And honestly, like, I'm not even mad at Jordan Wicks and what he did. And we'll get to that. But I'm not mad about the game. I'm just a little disappointed because We've seen this a few times now from the Cubs in these series wins where you feel like they had a chance to truly put a team away and get a series sweep. Obviously, they did that with the Athletics, which was great. We love that. And if you win 2 out of 3 pretty much all year, you're going to be good, right? We've established that. On this microphone, I think everybody feels the same way. But when you got a chance to put a team away like they did on Sunday, that's, I think, the one thing I want to see a little bit more from this team. And if they start to do that, and I understand it's not going to happen all the time. Beating a team 3 times in a row is not easy, right? There's a reason that you play a best of 5 or a best of 7, because beating a team that many times consecutively is not easy, nor should it be, right? Especially in a game of as much parity as baseball has as a sport. But when they've never really been out of any of the losses for the most part either. There's been a few where you're like, all right, chalk it up, whatever. But there's been a lot of them where you're like, well, shit, this thing goes that way. I think back to that Padres series from opening weekend at Wrigley. That's that Sunday game. You had a huge lead early. You let the Padres chip away, and then a bad defensive play is the easy thing to point your finger at and say, that's why they lost. Is that why they lost? Well, your offense went dormant for 7 innings. That's a game you should have put a really good baseball team away. Especially because the Padres only have, 5 losses all season, and 3 of them are to the Cubs. Awesome. Love hearing that. Love that stain on the Padres record. That's Cubby blue. Today's game, Easter Sunday game, feels that way in my mind. Because you get a really good first inning from Jameson Taillon. 2 strikeouts. Looks good. You started late already, which sucked because of rain. So the 1:20 start becomes like a 2 o'clock start. And then you get Ian Happ on. You get Kyle Tucker on. Seiya Suzuki strikes out on a really nasty pitch at that. And then you got to get the Reynolds wrap tarp back out because it starts to rain again. And then you got to wait another hour. And a little less than an hour. And I thought Taillon was done. I thought Kelly was done. Neither one of them were done. But it almost seemed like the hitters were more offbeat after the rain than the pitchers were. And don't get me wrong, right? It was great. Michael Busch comes up to bat just as he was going to before the rain delay. Big RBI single. They score a run. Beautiful. That's a great start. But then you can't get anything going the rest of the inning. A Dansby Swanson ground out moves the runners over. A Nico Hoerner ground out ends the inning. That's disappointing. That's very, very disappointing. And then you have to sit back and say, okay, the Diamondbacks fight back, but then they do a really good job, right? Yeah, the run scored, but then Nico Hoerner gets the throw to home plate to get Naylor. Keeps it a tie game. Beautiful. And on top of it, you get great work from your starting pitching. Jameson Taillon, 5 innings of work. 3 hits, 1 run, 2 walks, fans 6. We'll take that from Jameson Taillon. Compounding on that, we'll take what the bullpen did in a game that was tied. And you needed to keep it close. And because of the off day on Monday, you could use your high leverage arms, Craig Counsell. Well, he did just that. Julian Merryweather, even though he gave up 2 hits, still gets out of the inning clean, pitches a clean 6th, no runs, no walks, strikes out 1. He's got a 1.93 ERA to start the season. Hell yeah. Ethan Roberts. Is Ethan Roberts working himself into the circle of trust? Some say he might be. The second iteration of Ethan Roberts looked really good. A perfect inning. He's got a 1.69 ERA to start the campaign. Nice. Albeit a small sample size, right? He hasn't pitched a ton yet. But for what he has pitched, he's looked pretty good. Porter Hodge, after a brutal blow up in Friday's game, was a huge part of the reason the Diamondbacks came back in that one. pitches the exact inning, in my opinion, he needed on Sunday. Just 3 quick outs. Boom, boom, boom. That half inning flew. It was over in less than 10 minutes. Done. That's good for the Porter Hodge confidence. We love that. Good rebound. He'll be just fine. And then Ryan Pressly, again, the guy that, hand up, I was one of them. Everybody is screaming and moaning and bitching of like, this guy sucks. He's not, scary Ryan again. Oh, panic attack Pressly, right? We had heart attack Hector last year. He's really settled in. And I think now the Cubs look a little bit smarter going out and getting a guy who's been there and he's done that. And you only need him to be your closer. And you have enough arms where, hey, man, we're not going to beg you to go 2 innings. You don't need to be that guy. Just go out there and get the job done. And it really feels like he's starting to settle into that. A 2.45 ERA from him so far through the year. He had a strikeout in a beautiful ninth. His hook looked gross. Things were humming for Ryan Pressly in the ninth inning today. And that's, I think, the exact version of Ryan Pressly we want to see from as Cubs fans the rest of the way. And if he continues to pitch like that, every dollar you're paying him from the trade that was effectively just a money dump for the Astros looks really, really good right now. And hopefully that continues to be the case. Quick comment here from Triple R Bail Bonds. This is Porter Hodge, favorite Cub. Love that. Absolutely love that. That's a great question, actually, too. For those that are still live with us in the comments, and if you're watching this on playback and you want to drop a comment on the video as well, you're more than welcome to. Who is your favorite Cub currently on the team? I'm really curious to see what some of those answers are. We'll kind of use that as the roundup for this show. I'll share mine later, obviously, here. Matthew saying Pressly is the man. He certainly feels like that right now. And things were really going good. And then I know Jordan Wicks didn't give up any earned runs, hilariously enough, because of the Ghost Runners scoring. But the Diamondbacks put a lot of pressure on the Cubs. Again, this is not a piss-poor Diamondbacks team that the Cubs took care of business against this weekend. It's a very good Diamondbacks team. They were the best offensive team in baseball a season ago, have largely returned pretty much everybody outside of Jock Peterson. And you add Josh Naylor to that mix, who has been, nothing short of one of maybe the most clutch hitters in baseball over the last handful of seasons. Like, that's a well-organized team. And he got good support from his defense. Right? They try to steal home. Wicks does the right thing. They take care of Naylor at the plate. Great. Nico makes a hell of a play on that catch on the liner. That inevitably is probably in the gap. Keeps it in the infield. It's an out. Right? He got the support. And in the moment, did I like the throw to first? No. Especially when you know that, like, Nico's not a first baseman. That's not what he's used to, right? You got to have a little bit of a better throw there, especially if you're going to field that when you have a Michael Busch who's coming crashing down the line, who's trying to make that play for you. So you got to keep all of that in mind, right? And I think, in the moment I was very mad at Wicks and what he did. But now that I've been able to settle, he went out there for a second inning. He gave you a chance to win. And frankly, especially after a really brutal first outing, because remember, he got tagged for a lot of those runs on Friday too, after giving up the 3 straight singles to start the game. He's probably still figuring some things out. Remember, this is also a guy who hasn't pitched a ton over the last season plus because of a lot of injuries. That's been the downside for the Cubs with a lot of their young pitchers. I know everybody wants to throw Cade Horton and all these other guys to the wolves and say, go swim and figure out how to pitch in the major leagues. A lot of them lost very critical development time a season ago, no matter what level that development is coming at. You can still develop at the major league level, right? And Ben Brown lost that because of the neck injury. Cade Horton lost a ton of time because of his injury that knocked him out for most of the year. Wicks, think about this. Wicks got hurt just following that Texas series last year. We didn't see him till September. I mean, he missed effectively 5 months of baseball. That's tough, especially for a guy who had just made his debut the year before in a playoff run down the stretch and pitched really well in 2023. So he loses out on that. Javier Assad's hurt to start this year for the Cubs, right? Who's been a good young starter for this team and can do multiple things at a really high level. So even, again, through all that adversity, this Cubs team is still finding a way to stay in games. And I think that's the most important thing about what Wicks did on Sunday. He kept them in the game, especially when the new Ghost Runner rule is meant to end baseball games faster. That is intentional. And he still gave you a chance to win, yielding just one run in each of the innings. You're only down one, right? The Cubs come back in the 10th. Nico Horner. Once again, we're saying his name a lot. He comes out, gets it done, delivers the RBI, scores Dansby. Ho, we're tied. Unfortunately, they can't get anything further. And then you keep it moving into the 11th. Ian Happ literally hit that baseball to the perfect place for Perdomo to make that play and double up the Ghost Runner. There's nothing John Birdie could have done there, because if that ball is 4 feet to the right or 4 feet to the left, it's through for a base hit and you're scoring if you're Birdie. Because Ian Happ pissed on that baseball, but it was just right at him. You're going to have bad breaks sometimes, and that's what happened on Sunday. So, again, yes, am I a little disappointed that they couldn't get it done? I am, but sometimes the luck's not going to go your way in games. And Sunday was a weird game. It was wet. It was a little cold. I know it was cold by the lake. It wasn't too bad out in the rest of the parts of the city, especially the further west you go. But boy, I can tell you right now, it was cold as a mother by the lake. So it's a gross game on Easter Sunday. And they were in it and they gave themselves a chance. Yeah, it sucks. But overall, you got to be happy with a series win. Got to be. I know I am. That's another series victory. And again, this is not against the garbage fire teams that I think Cubs fans are used to this team beating up on over the last few seasons. It's not like that. It's not like that. We go back, the series split with the Diamondbacks. Since then, in the month of April, you sweep the Athletics. You take 2 out of 3 from the Padres. You took 2 out of 3 from the Texas Rangers. You took 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers in their own building. You lost 2 out of 3 to the Padres when you really think about it, you had a chance to win that series. Monday's game got away from them. You had a lead, though. And then Wednesday's game, you can make the argument they were in it. But then you take advantage of the day off, the epic game on Friday. You take care of business on Saturday. So it's 2 or 3 against the D-backs. Could have been a sweep. Now you have another off day. You have 3 off days if you're the Cubs in the next week. You only play 5 games between Monday and the following Monday. And they're all at Wrigley. And all you got to do is take a puddle jumper flight to Pittsburgh for a 3-game set that starts on Tuesday. You got to feel pretty good about where this team stands. Matt says it well here. He says, series wins means the playoffs. 100%. You win 2 out of 3 the whole season. That's a 666 win percentage. And I can promise you right now that gets you into the postseason. That absolutely gets you into the postseason. And think about it. Theoretically speaking, the schedule is supposed to be easier from here on out with who you play in the month of May, because I need to start learning the next month's schedule. That's always a goal of mine. You got 3 with the Pirates, who are a pesky team. Great pitching, obviously Paul Skeens, but you got 3 in their building. PNC, the Cubs like to hit at PNC. Ian Happ loves to hit at PNC Park. Then you got Milwaukee for 3 in Milwaukee. Is that going to be a pain in the ass series? Of course, it always is. But then you're back home. San Francisco's having a good start to the year. Jung-Ho Lee is looking like the player that they signed for $113 million a season ago, now that he's healthy. He's off to a great start. You got the Mets, who, that's a good ball club, but You can probably take care of business. And then it's the stretch that I hope the Cubs lose maybe 3 games. If they only lose 3 games in this aforementioned stretch I'm about to get to here, aforementioned stretch. That's not good English, Ron Lewis. If we get to that point, they've got 3 at home with the Marlins, an off day, 3 at home against the White Sox. Then you go to Miami for 3, an off day, at Cincy for 3. Cubs hit really well at Great American Ballpark. And then you're home for 3 against the Colorado Rockies with an off day, and then you have home for 3 against the Cincinnati Reds to close out the month of May. And then you get an off day, and then you're into June, and it's the Nationals, Tigers, and Phillies in 3 straight road series, which will be tough. But you got a month of May, you got a chunk of May there where they can really take advantage and get ahead. And I think get to a point where you can almost reward yourself a little bit for having the April that they've had against these really good teams. Having the April you've had when you've had to beat teams like the Padres and the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks. Really, really, really good players. And it's going to be interesting to see where that goes from there. A ton of comments that I'm just combing through here. Matthew had a few from the discussion regarding Sunday's game. He said Wicks should be a starter, and he says he feels like they have it backwards. He thinks Ben Brown should be in the pen and Wicks should be a starter. I think that's interesting. I think that's what the Cubs wanted to happen. That was effectively what happened at the start of last year, and I think just because of the timing of injuries is why it's the way it is now, if that makes sense. Because Wicks got hurt after being a starter, and then Brown took his spot in the rotation effectively and pitched really well till he got hurt. And then Wicks came back and couldn't really work back in. Obviously, we didn't see Brown the rest of the season, but then I think by kind of default, they wanted to give Brown the first chance. But maybe, right? Maybe Jordan Wicks does end up being a starter. Who knows? The thing that I always have to remind myself when it comes to baseball is this story. We're in chapter 2 of the season right now of a 20 to 30 chapter book. There's a lot of shit that can happen and change that we don't know yet, right? We haven't gotten to that part of the story. Maybe Jordan Wicks does jump into the rotation at some point this season. Is it impossible? No, not at all. I think it's possibly likely if injuries and things like that. Again, you're already down one huge injury at Justin Steele, which, by the way, he had his surgery, was successful, also wasn't full Tommy John, so that's huge. So that means we should see him by about this time next year. So he's probably not ready to start the season, but you probably see him by May. And that's massive for the 2026 Cubs, but that's a 2026 Cubs problem. So get well, Justin. We miss you. Cubs on Taps guys love you. So maybe, right? Maybe we see Jordan Wicks as a starter at some point this season, depending how things go from there. He says trade for Nolan. We got to the series wins means playoffs. If the Cubs face Skeens, yeah, things may become interesting. He thinks that's a loss. The Cubs should get him. I totally agree. Unfortunately, he costs way too much at the current state. Maybe when he's a free agent down the road, who knows? But we got a lot of years until that's going to happen. It's going to be interesting to see. Speaking of Wicks here, Triple R Bail Bond says Jordan Wicks needs to build his confidence. I agree. I think that's incredibly spot on because, again, this is a guy who was really, really good in 2023 when he came up for his brief stint at the end of the year. Again, for a Cubs team that at the time was competing for a playoff position, mind you. And then he turns over and 2024 happens. Didn't pitch great to start the year and then gets hurt and then misses most of the season. And then this year, right, doesn't make the rotation out of spring, goes down to Iowa. He's back in AAA after he's tasted and sniffed the big leagues. There is definitely a confidence aspect, especially for a young pitcher. Again, I think today's outing, he should help build some confidence. It wasn't perfect or the prettiest, but it was effective. And at the end of the day, he kept the Cubs in it in a really difficult situation in extra innings. So who's to say that can't happen? I agree, though. I think he needs to just build that confidence back up. Little note here from Scott. Winning percentage of games played, 700. And that's what the Cubs have already played. The winning percentage of games left to play this season is a 460 effectively. The schedule gets statistically easier. You still got to go out and win the ball games. but matchups that are super favorable. And speaking of matchups that are favorable coming up, the Marlins is one of them. He says if Alcantara beats us, they should just go get him, and it might happen. Rich and I talked a little bit about it on, I believe it was following the Padres series. I believe it was last Sunday's show. We talked a little bit about Alcantara and when do you go get him and do you trade for him now, or do the Marlins even want to trade him because there's no bidding war yet? You're going to have that bidding war at the deadline. So if he is a Cub, it's probably not going to be until July or August, but certainly a guy, especially with the amount of years of team control, would certainly make sense if the Cubs feel like the price is right. Another comment here from Matt. He says, "Can we just give Tucker $600 million and lock him up?" Brother, I feel you. I'm at the point right now where my mental sanity for the sport of baseball hinges on a Kyle Tucker extension. Truly, like to the point where if Kyle Tucker's not a Cub next year, I am going to I'm going to enjoy baseball significantly less than I am right now. I can just feel it mentally. And I think it might just be a mental block I put up in my own brain. But if he gets extended, every single little bit of angst I have towards the Cubs organization, team, situation, whatever you want to call it, just the aura that is the Chicago Cubs in my life, all the negativity goes away if Kyle Tucker gets paid. So I'm right there with you, Matt. I give him a blank check at this point. I don't care. It's not my money. Finally, Scott with a comment here. He says the major kind of one to keep in mind here is Keegan Thompson. 5 games, 9 innings, 5 hits, and he has not allowed an earned run down in Iowa. He says hashtag call him up. I think that just highlights the depth that the Cubs have, though, in terms of bullpen arms. I mean, at this point in his career, Keegan's probably just a bullpen arm, but they have options. I think that's super important. They also have starting options. Scott, I know you'll appreciate this because he's down in Iowa right now. Chris Flexen has been flexing at the AAA level. That was bad. I'm sorry. But he's been really good. His last outing, 6 innings, I believe he only gave up 1 run. He might not have even given up any runs. 2 hits, 1 walk, I think. He didn't really strike a lot of people out. I think he only had like 2 Ks, but effective. And if injuries become a problem, right, as we've seen in the starting rotation already, having that guy in your back pocket who was one of the top inning eaters for the White Sox a season ago, who, yeah, maybe his numbers weren't great, but I'll tell you what, he gave you innings. He was one of the few guys on that starting rotation that would routinely go 6. Sometimes you just need that guy that's going to cruise and give you an opportunity to win games. And that's going to be super, super important. So I think, having Keegan Thompson in the back pocket as a player that can come up soon, if you need more bullpen reinforcement or whatever the situation is, that's going to be meaningful as the season moves on. Matt says here, the Marlins as of now are just a pathway for talent. The fastest and the best batter coming to the bigs right now. They have a ton of talent. I mean, that's going to be a team that's going to be, they should be good in the future. I don't know. That organization's just a dumpster fire. But look at Matt Mervis right now. He's been phenomenal. And, I would like to see the Marlins have a little bit of success, not when they're playing the Cubs, of course, but friend of the program, Jack McMullen. I want him to be able to call some good games. He has called some good games already on the radio for the Marlins this season to start. They've had a couple of walk-offs. I think they had like 2 or 3 walk-offs in a row. It was a crazy little stretch there for them earlier this month. Again, it's not a team that's great because they're uber young, as Matt highlighted, but just that they have the talent and it never works out. I don't know what it is about the Marlins. It hasn't worked out really since the old ownership when they were winning World Series back in 97 and 03, which we won't talk about 03 because I know that's still painful for a lot of Cubs fans. All right. Before we get to talking a little bit about the Dodgers series, I asked everybody to drop favorite Cubs because Triple R Bailbounds told us his was Porter Hodge. We had a few, not a ton, but we had a few. So I will happily share them. Matt said Nico is his favorite player. He says Nico's making a statement so far. Look at his numbers. He's had a really good start to the year. He's being the best version of Nico Hoerner. And I think that's important because Nico Hoerner is a unique type of player, right? His OPS is never going to be insanely high because he doesn't have the slugging. But in terms of everything that he does well that makes him an important baseball player on this team, especially at a position like second base, from like the glove perspective and things of that nature and the speed perspective, he's doing it at the highest version of Nico Hoerner. And I think that's super important because there was a lot of people that were ready to fire Nico off into the sun. I've been one to say that he was probably the guy that would get traded. It's very clear that why the Cubs haven't just traded him for anybody. He's a very valuable baseball player. So I think that's a great favorite with Nico Hoerner. Scott said PCA is the fan favorite. So maybe that's Scott saying, maybe PCA is his favorite as well. And my dad says Tucker and Bush are even. I think that's certainly interesting. My favorite, selfishly, because we have a relationship with the guy as a friend of the program, it's hard not to say Justin Steele, quite frankly. But if we're putting Justin aside because there is that personal connection, just a player I enjoy watching, the guy that when he's up to bat or when he's playing, I really want to just sit down and watch more of. It's tough. Tucker's the easy answer, and I'm enjoying the hell out of Kyle Tucker right now as a baseball player, especially because he's a Cub. I'm still kicking myself for never publishing. So there is a video that lives deep in the archives. I feel like we should just publish it at this point. As just like hey, this was the thoughts at that time. And, it never got published, but here's what it was. It was like 3 trades the Cubs can make to completely just shift the organizational structure of the roster. And actually one of the trades was Kyle Tucker. So good job around this. We got some good foresight. But he's been so much fun to watch. But I'll tell you what, Ian Happ, I think, is my favorite Cub. And it's hard, right? I like all the guys on this team. Michael Busch, I really enjoy Michael Busch. I think he's so undervalued as a baseball player. Not necessarily by the Cubs fan base, but I think baseball as a whole. This is a guy who at one point in 2024, in his first year at first base as a routine major league starter, led the league in defensive runs saved, and is a guy, in my opinion, that he keeps it up is going to have a Gold Glove at first base at some point in the future. He is that good, in my opinion, and he's turned into something that he wasn't as a player coming up. And good on the Cubs for recognizing his value, and good on the Dodgers for drafting and developing him, and good on both teams for making a deal that doesn't rob baseball fans of a really good baseball player, but at the same time allows 2 teams to get what they want out of a deal. To me, that was probably the one trade in recent memory that I can think of for the Cubs where both teams kind of got what they truly wanted out of the deal. Zaire Hope, Jackson Ferris are now largely considered top prospects with the Dodgers. Maybe not like top prospects, but they're up in their top 30. And you got guys that don't need to be on the 40-man roster because they're years and years away because they're super young. That's what the Dodgers needed. High upside prospects who are going to be here in 4 years because they don't need them right now. But those guys you need to have in your system and are important. I really, 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 really love, though, what is happening with Ian Happ, right? And just the baseball player that he is. Like Michael Busch is really good. And that trade worked out really well. But it's not that they can pay what the Cubs can't. It's that they choose to pay what the Cubs won't. The Cubs have the money. If they really wanted to spend, they can spend. They just choose not to. Neither here nor there. But Ian Happ is generally my favorite player on the team to watch. I think Michael Busch is probably a close second for me right now. But Ian Happ is so special, right? Triple R says it here. Just a solid baseball player. And yes, he's kind of become the next face of the Cubs. And I'm not saying he's the franchise player. Like I think I saw a lot of on socials that, PCA was the face of the Cubs. And maybe he will be in a few years. But if we're talking from the sense of the community aspect, the tenure aspect, and a guy who puts himself out there to Cubs fans, Ian Happ is kind of the face of the Cubs. He's the longest tenured Cub, pardon me. Oof, pause. He's been up with the big league team since 2017, obviously in spurts. We remember the demotion, and then he came back and really became the version of Ian Happ that we see now. He's won 3 straight Gold Gloves in left field, which is spectacular, of course. And you know what you get with Ian Happ. I think that's the best part about it, is every season we come into the season and think, what are we going to get out of so-and-so? What are we going to get out of so-and-so? Like, Ian Happ's going to be a 4-WAR player. You know that for sure. And yeah, I think there's still a ceiling there where he can get to maybe a 5.5 WAR player that, Jed Hoyer talks about, that you need those guys that take a little bit of a step forward. But he's at minimum giving you a 4-WAR season because of the defense, because of his ability to get on base via walks. He has a great eye for the strike zone. The switch hitting has value, maybe not in statistics speaking, but he can give you different matchups, especially because he's improved as a right-handed hitter and not just, kind of a one-trick pony as a left-handed guy who just so happens to switch hit. And then on top of all of that, he can drive in runs. He can score runs. He can, he was a doubles machine back in 2022. And yeah, maybe the average and the doubles went down a little bit for Ian Happ, but he started to slug a little bit more and started to take more walks and became a player that you can rely on early in your lineup because of what he does and what he does well. Ian Happ had a 25 homer season a year ago. I think there's a chance he has a 30 homer season this year if he gets hot when things warm up at Wrigley. I think he's a guy, because of who's hitting around him now, that can be a 90 RBI guy. He's habitually sat in the 70s, high 70s typically, but 70s nonetheless. I think because his floor is so high and there's still room for more, that makes it just such a joy to watch Ian Happ play baseball. And it's really fun to sit in the left field bleachers and joke with everybody that Ian Happ has America's ass, which is obviously a nod to anybody that knows Marvel movies, Captain America, Chris Evans. Oh, that's America's ass. No, Ian Happ has America's ass. Ask any lady that sits in the left field bleachers. They will completely agree. Or dudes. I'll agree. It's America's ass. Oh, let's see here. What else do we got? Matthew said Happ is awesome, and he loves coffee. Yes, he does. We do appreciate a good coffee. I do enjoy Connect Roasters, actually. Believe it or not, the Gold Glove blend, which is a nod to Ian, is my favorite coffee in this entire planet that can be made. I genuinely enjoy it. Matthew says here he doesn't remember his first name, if it's Braden or Braxton, but Simpson. Guy had over 100 stolen bases for the Marlins in the minor leagues. He followed that up saying that he's a guy that the Cubs should get. I mean, yeah, it'd be nice to have that kind of guy. The Rays have that kind of guy right now in Chandler Simpson, who's stupid fast. I mean, he makes fast people look not fast. He's now up in the bigs, and it's going to be kind of fun to see what he does overall. I mean, I feel like the Cubs kind of have a guy like that, or at least has that kind of flair of the dramatics, right? In Pete Crow Armstrong. So you got to love guys like that. Matt also said here, with the offense like it is now, Happ will have 30 homers, but that gives back to Tucker. Sure does. 100%. Yeah, absolutely. Again, a complete lineup helps everybody. Incredibly well put. And then Hank says here, props to Ron for working on an Easter Sunday night. Yeah. Hey, there was a need for discussion of this Cubs team after this series win, again, against a really good Diamondbacks team, and it needed to be discussed. So I guess it's kind of my final thought. Ian Happ is my favorite current Cub. I really genuinely enjoy watching Ian Happ play baseball. Before we get out of here, let's look ahead and see what's on tap next. Yes, it's that blue team from California. The Los Angeles Dodgers make their way to Wrigley Field. It's a 2-game set, and that begins on Tuesday night. It's a 6:40 start time. Anybody that knows how the Cubs work, April, May, and September, it's 6:40 start times in the evening instead of 7:10. Those happen over the summer. Or is it 7:05? I'm questioning myself now. I think it's 7:10, but I could be totally wrong. Regardless, Dodgers come to Wrigley for 2. It will be Shota Imanaga on the bump on Tuesday night, which is perfect because Tyler Edmonds will be in attendance, as will Bobby Foster. So a pair of Cubs on Tap friends will be at the ballpark on Tuesday night as Shota Imanaga takes the mound for the Cubbies. It will be Dustin May on the bump for the Los Angeles Dodgers. The Dodgers, again, their starters off to a great start this season. Their bullpen ERA is a little bit high. Marquee Sports Network did a really nice comparison graphic after the game during their post-game show with Elise Menaker and Cliff Floyd today in front of the program, Cole Wright. And, their starters ERA is far better than the Cubs, even though the Cubs is still like a 3-something. But the Cubs bullpen ERA actually far better than the Dodgers. So who knows? Who knows how this game's going to go? It's going to be a beautiful week at Wrigley. I think that's incredibly important to note. The wind could be blowing out on Tuesday and Wednesday. Maybe it's a power series. Maybe it's a pitching series. Maybe it's a little bit of both. I think there's endless possibility for what this 2-game set looks like. Obviously, the Cubs taking both would be phenomenal. At least taking one, I think, is the minimum, because then you have another off day on Thursday. So one of our shows again this week will be on an off day, just as all of our Thursday shows have been throughout the month of April so far. And that'll be leading into a 3-game set then with the Phillies this weekend, which again, weather's looking okay for the most part. It might be a little cooler on the weekend. So we'll see how the ballpark plays. We saw it in this Diamondback series. The ballpark played a little bit different, kind of on each day of this series. So who knows? Who knows what the next couple days look like? But 2 games coming up with the Dodgers, and certainly hope the Cubbies take care of business. Shota is our ace, as Matt says here. It will be it'll be good. It'll be good to see what happens going forward. A couple of quick more comments here before we round this thing out. Yes, Chandler Simpson is the guy. He thought he was with Miami. Yeah, he's with Tampa, outfielder. And he said he comes down to this. Jed needs to get help at third base and for the bullpen. Bullpen, I think, might be able to figure it out as it stands. I really do. I think this series gave me a lot of belief in some of these guys in terms of what they were doing. Third base, I think Matt Shaw eventually makes it back to the big leagues at some point this year. But I think John Birdie's been okay. I mean, he's not perfect, but for a guy that's typically a bench player, I think he's doing a lot of good things. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. As always, I encourage everybody to follow along on the On Tap Sportsnet YouTube. Like, subscribe, hit the old bell button. You'll know when all of our great shows go live because, as all of you know, as Cubs on Tap listeners, Cubs on Tap is one of 2 shows covering the Chicago Cubs here as a part of the On Tap Sports Network. Check out our friends over at the Dingers Podcast. They are live every Monday night. So if you need more Cubs baseball, especially on an off night on Monday night, head over to the On Tap Sportsnet YouTube in the mid to late evening hours, and you will find our friends over at the Dingers Podcast on talking about this series, and you'll get some of their insight, and our good friend Mitch and company over there. Follow them at Dinger Cubs. Follow the Cubs on Tap account at Cubbies on Tap on the socials. You know where to find me. You know where to find the whole crew as well. Be sure to follow everybody. Looking forward to continuing the season with all the boys and talking Cubs baseball as we wind ever closer to the month of May and hopefully some warmer weather, because I'm over this cold and garbage and nonsense. Neither here nor there. Cubs fans, if you want and you're ready, we got it all as well. All the big sports covered, as well as other sports in Chicago. Bears, again, it's NFL draft week. Be on the lookout for lots of content from Bears on Tap. And the Bulls and Blackhawks are now in off-season mode after a regular season coming to an end and a play-in tournament game coming to an end for the Hawks and Bulls respectively. Big off seasons for both of those teams coming up here as they look to ascend in the future. Be sure to follow Bulls on Tap and the Four Feathers podcast. And as always, Cubs fans, you have friends that like the Southsiders, and so do we. Send your friends to our friends and let them be friends over at Sox on Tap, ontapsportsnet.com, at OnTap Sportsnet on the socials, the OnTap Sports Network. Go and check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. What a series win. Could have been a sweep, but a lot of good stuff, a lot of crazy stuff. Perhaps the game of the season, all in between an off day and a day to breathe on Monday for Cubs fans, but 2 with the Dodgers before the Fightin' Phils come to town over the weekend. We will see you again on Tuesday night following that Dodgers first game, and then we will also see you on the off day this week on Thursday. As always, we wish you guys well. I hope everybody had a great holiday Sunday and holiday weekend. the Cubs got a series win. So hopefully that makes it a little bit better for your sports fandom as we look toward Monday. And what do you say, Cubs fans? An FTC? I guess an FTD. Does that work? Yeah, that works. And let's go Cubbies.